I booked the Airbnb for 4 nights. It was an upstairs unit in an older house, probably built in the 40s or 50s. The listing showed bright, clean rooms, a small kitchen, and a cozy bedroom with slanted ceilings and a view of the backyard. It wasn't fancy, but it looked comfortable, and I liked the idea of staying in a place with a bit of character. The host messaged me the key code before check-in and said to let them know if I needed anything. I never met them in person. The unit was exactly like the photos. Hardwood floors, old radiators, mismatched furniture that somehow worked together. The living room had a soft, sagging couch and a coffee table made from an old window pane. The bedroom was small but had a nice window that let in morning light. The closet had one of those folding doors, and when I opened it, I saw a full-length mirror attached to the inside. Seemed like a normal detail. The first night was uneventful. I unpacked a little, watched some TV, then went to bed around midnight. The bed was comfortable enough, and the street outside was quiet except for the occasional car passing. I closed the closet door before getting into bed, just out of habit. I always like knowing it's shut. When I woke up the next morning, I noticed the closet door was open. Not wide, just cracked a few inches. I didn't think much of it at first. Figured maybe I hadn't latched it properly. But when I walked past it to grab a shirt, I saw that the mirror was fogged up. Not completely, but enough to catch my attention. There was a faint oval-shaped smudge right around the height of my face, like someone had leaned in close and breathed on it. The room wasn't humid. The heater was on, but it was across the room. The windows were closed. I wiped the mirror clean with my sleeve, thinking maybe it was left over from the last guest or some weird temperature thing. I shut the door fully, making sure the folding panels were flat and pressed in. The second night, I was still thinking about the mirror. I didn't want to make it a big deal, but something about it just felt off. Before bed, I made a point to clean the mirror again, this time using a tissue and a bit of water. I watched it closely, no fog, no smudge. I closed the closet door and leaned a backpack against it, just a light one, not heavy. I figured if it swung open on its own again, I'd hear or see the bag fall over. I slept okay, though I woke up once around 4 a.m. for no reason. The room was quiet. I checked my phone, rolled over, and went back to sleep. When I got up in the morning, the closet door was open again. The backpack had been pushed just slightly forward, like the door had opened and nudged it aside gently. And the mirror? Same oval-shaped smudge. This time, it was clearer, more defined. I stared at it for a long time. It looked exactly like the kind of fog you get when someone stands close and exhales. A faint moisture ring, not random like condensation, just intentional. It really did look like someone had breathed on it while I slept. I tried to come up with reasons. Maybe air was leaking through the wall behind the closet. Maybe it was warmer inside the closet than the rest of the room and the mirror reacted somehow. But that didn't explain the shape. It didn't explain the door opening either. The latches were fine. I tested them. They weren't loose. I thought about messaging the host that morning, but what was I going to say? Your mirror fogs up in the shape of a human breath and your closet opens by itself. I figured I was overthinking. Maybe it was just my imagination turning something small into something creepy. That third night, I went a step further. I found some painter's tape in a drawer in the kitchen, probably left by a past guest, and I used it to seal the closet shut. 2 long strips, one along the side of the folding panels, another across the top where they met the frame. I pressed them down hard. Then I cleaned the mirror one more time, really scrubbed it, and took a photo of it before shutting the door. I went to bed around midnight again. I was tired but uneasy. The bedroom was colder than usual that night. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and kept glancing at the closet. Just a taped door, nothing special. But I had trouble falling asleep. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. At some point, I must have dozed off. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Not from a sound, just this jolt of awareness. Like when you wake up and immediately feel like something's wrong. The room was dark and silent, and I didn't move at first. I just listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no creaks, no street sounds. Just stillness. I sat up slowly, and my eyes went straight to the closet. The door was open. Not wide, just like before, maybe 6 inches. Both strips of tape were peeled back, still hanging from one side like they'd been lifted carefully and folded away. My backpack, which I had leaned against the door again, was pushed several inches forward on the floor. I didn't get up right away. I just sat there, staring at the open crack. The room felt heavier somehow. My mouth was dry. I finally stood, walked over, and opened the closet fully. The mirror was fogged, that same oval smudge, right at face level. Not bigger, not smaller. Same size, same place. I stood in front of it and stared at my reflection. My face looked pale in the low light from the hallway. I raised my hand and touched the glass. It felt cool and slightly damp where the fog was. Not wet, not dripping, just that strange moistness you get when someone breathes close. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the living room with the light on, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself. Around 7 a.m., I packed everything and got ready to leave. My booking was for one more night, but I didn't care. I couldn't stay there again. Before leaving, I took another photo of the mirror and a close-up of the tape peeled back from the door. Not that I expected to do anything with them, it just felt like something I should document. I sent a message to the host around 8 a.m., letting them know I was cutting the stay short and had left the keys on the kitchen counter. I didn't explain why. I just said, decided to head out a day early. Thanks for the stay. They didn't reply. No message, no follow-up, no refund, no acknowledgement. 2 days later, out of curiosity, I checked the listing again. Still up, still active, still showing the same photos. One of the bedroom closet even showed the mirror. Clean, bright, and harmless looking. But I know what I saw. I didn't tell anyone about it right away. It felt weird talking about something that didn't technically happen. Nothing dramatic. No one broke in. No one got hurt. But something was wrong with that room. With that mirror. With the way the door kept opening like it was being handled by someone careful, deliberate. And that fogged up glass, right where a face would be. Every night, I've stayed in dozens of AIRBNBs. Some noisy, some messy, a couple sketchy. But that was the first time I ever left early. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't make any sense. Something was off in that house. In that room. I don't need to know more. I don't care if it was a design flaw or some bizarre airflow trick or something I'll never figure out. All I know is I'll never book an old house again, especially not one with mirrors inside closets. The Airbnb was a small one-bedroom unit attached to a larger house in a quiet residential neighborhood about 20 minutes from the city. The listing said, shared backyard, but it didn't really matter to me. I wasn't planning to hang out back there anyway. I was in town for a 3-day training workshop, and all I needed was a clean place to sleep and shower. The host had good reviews, the place looked neat in the photos, and the price was decent. When I checked in, everything seemed fine. The key was in a lockbox. The unit was tidy, smelled like fresh detergent, and had a little kitchenette, a queen bed, and a clean bathroom. There were no personal items inside, just the usual. Folded towels, a mini coffee setup, some local brochures. The backyard was accessible through a sliding glass door in the kitchen. It was a flat patch of grass, maybe 30 feet wide, with an old wooden fence enclosing it on all sides. There were a couple of mismatched lawn chairs near a planter box and a small tree in one corner. A narrow stone path ran from the sliding door to the back fence, which had a gate, but it was padlocked shut. I opened the door briefly to check it out. The yard was quiet. No toys, no grill, no lights strung up, just empty space. It felt a little forgotten, like no one had been out there in a while. I didn't think much about it at first. I unpacked, made some instant noodles, watched a bit of TV, then went to bed early. The first night was uneventful. I slept fine. The second day was routine. I got back from the workshop a little after 6 p.m., grabbed takeout, ate in front of the TV again, and thought about doing some emails, but I was too tired. I stretched out on the bed for a bit, scrolling on my phone, and that's when I noticed something outside. Through the blinds, I saw the backyard. The sun hadn't fully gone down yet, and the light was the kind of orange-pink that makes everything feel still. That's when I saw them, cigarette butts, scattered near the edge of the lawn where the grass met the back fence. Not just one or two, at least 5 or 6, some of them still looking fresh, uncrushed. They hadn't been there yesterday. I was sure of that. I don't smoke. No one else was renting the unit. The house connected to my Airbnb had a separate entrance on the other side. The host had messaged me once to welcome me, but said she'd be out of town until Monday. There was no car in the driveway, and the windows on her side of the house had been dark both nights. It bugged me a little, but I didn't overthink it. Maybe a landscaper or someone else came by during the day and hung out back there. Still, I locked the sliding door and shut the blinds. The next morning, I stepped out into the backyard again, more out of curiosity than anything. The air was damp and cool, and the grass had that early morning smell. I walked over to the fence. The cigarette butts were still there. Some had ash trails leading into the grass. A couple looked freshly smoked. That's when I noticed the lawn chair. It had been moved. The day before, it had been sitting off to the side, facing the little tree. Now it was pulled closer to the house and turned around so it directly faced the sliding glass door. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. I hadn't touched it. I looked around again. The fence was too tall to look over without standing on something. I tried the gate, still locked. I didn't see any cameras outside, and there weren't any other windows facing the backyard except the ones in my unit. The weirdest part was how deliberate it looked. The chair was placed in a way that it lined up perfectly with the kitchen window, like someone had been sitting there, watching. That night, I decided to keep all the lights off inside once it got dark, just to see. I didn't open the blinds, but I left a gap in the middle, wide enough to see out into the backyard without being obvious. I sat on the couch with a blanket over me and waited. I wasn't expecting anything. I figured I was just being paranoid, maybe bored, overthinking it. Time moved slow. I kept checking the clock on the oven. Midnight passed, then 12:30. At 1:07, I was about to give up. I stood up to stretch. When I glanced outside, I froze. Someone was standing just beyond the fence. Not moving, not swaying, just completely still. I couldn't see their face. They were in a dark hoodie, hood pulled up, arms at their sides. I could make out the silhouette because of the streetlight a few houses down. It lit up part of the fence, just enough to show a bit of their shape. They weren't leaning on the fence or trying to climb. They were just there, watching the house, watching my window. I stayed frozen. My first instinct was to grab my phone, but I didn't move. I didn't want to make any noise or let them know I'd seen them. After maybe a full minute, I slowly backed away into the hallway, keeping low, heart pounding. I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the floor, phone in hand. I didn't call the police. I didn't know what to even say. The person hadn't done anything. They were outside the fence. They hadn't broken in. What was I going to tell them? That someone was standing in a backyard at 1 a.m. in a hoodie? I checked the Airbnb listing again to confirm. The host wasn't supposed to be back yet, and there were no other guests. I stayed in that bathroom until it started getting light outside. When I finally came out, the backyard was empty again. No sign of anyone, but the lawn chair had been moved again. This time, even closer to the house. I packed my things right away. I didn't shower, didn't eat. I shoved everything into my bag and checked out early. I didn't bother waiting for a refund or contacting the host. I left the key in the lockbox and drove to a hotel downtown, paid more than I wanted to, and locked the door behind me with the deadbolt and the chain. I didn't sleep that night either. A few days later, I got a message from the host thanking me for the stay and reminding me to leave a review. I didn't respond. I checked the listing a week later out of curiosity. It was still up. Still said, shared backyard. Still had 5 stars. I never told anyone about it. But now, every time I book an Airbnb, I check the backyard before anything else. I never rent places that mention shared outdoor spaces. I never stay in ones attached to another house. And I never, ever leave the blinds open at night. I was 2 weeks into a month-long work trip, staying in a quiet suburban Airbnb just outside a mid-sized city. The place was a one-bedroom guest house, detached from the main property. Nothing fancy, just a clean, affordable space with a small kitchen, a couch, and a queen bed. It had its own keypad entrance, and the host lived in the main house up front, but I never saw them except for the day I arrived. They handed me the code, gave me a quick tour, and left. That was it. My routine was the same every day. Wake up at 6, quick shower, coffee, then head to the job site. Long hours, dusty work, not much time or energy left for anything else. I'd grab takeout on the way home, eat in front of the small TV, answer a few emails, and crash by 10. It was the kind of stay you forget about after a month. Quiet, uneventful, temporary. But near the end of the second week, I noticed something weird. It was early morning, around 6:30. I had just brushed my teeth and leaned over the sink to rinse when I caught sight of something odd in the reflection of the mirror. In the plastic cup by the faucet, the one where I kept my toothbrush and razor, there was a second toothbrush. I stopped mid-motion, confused. It was old-looking, the bristles splayed out like a burst of straw. The handle was yellowed, faded blue at the base. It wasn't mine. I stood there staring at it for a good 30 seconds, trying to make sense of it. I always kept my toiletries minimal, just the one toothbrush, travel-sized toothpaste, a razor, and a small bottle of mouthwash. No one else was staying with me. I hadn't even had visitors. I picked the toothbrush up carefully, holding it between two fingers. It was damp, not soaking, but definitely used recently. I looked around the bathroom. Nothing else seemed off. My towel was still hung neatly over the door, the shower curtain untouched, the cabinet under the sink still closed. At first, I thought maybe it was a cleaning oversight. Maybe it had been there when I checked in and I just hadn't noticed. But that didn't sit right with me. I used that bathroom every single day, brushed my teeth twice daily, washed my face. I would have noticed another toothbrush in the same cup as mine. I wrapped the old brush in toilet paper and tossed it in the trash. I didn't dwell on it. I figured someone forgot to toss it out during the last cleaning. That made sense. The place didn't seem dirty, but it was still an Airbnb, not a hotel. 2 days passed. Nothing happened. Then on Sunday morning, it was there again. Same toothbrush. I'd just gotten out of the shower, towel around my waist, and there it was, sitting in the same cup, in the same position. Damp, tilted slightly against mine. The same worn-down bristles, the same faded blue. This time, it made my stomach twist. I didn't touch it right away. I just stood there in silence, looking at it. The silence of the place suddenly felt different, heavier. The hum of the bathroom fan seemed louder than usual. I stepped back, wiped the mirror, then looked at it again. Still there. I went out to the kitchen and sat down on the stiff couch. I didn't even get dressed for a while. I just sat there trying to think. The door had a keypad lock. No signs of forced entry. I checked the windows. None of them were unlocked or broken. My stuff hadn't been touched. Laptop was still where I left it. Phone charging. Nothing missing. That's when I messaged the host. I kept it calm, professional. Just asked if anyone else might have access to the guest house. A cleaner? A family member? Maybe someone staying there before me had a spare key? They replied an hour later. Said no one else had access. Just them. They even said they'd changed the code to be safe, which they did later that afternoon. Sent me the new code, told me to keep them posted. Still, I didn't sleep great that night. I kept thinking about that toothbrush. Who did it belong to? How did it come back? The next day was normal. Long work hours. I came back exhausted. Checked the bathroom immediately. The toothbrush was gone. Good. Maybe it had been a mistake. Maybe the host came by, tossed it while changing the code. That night, I slept a little better. Still not great, but better. But then it happened again. The third time was the worst. It was a Tuesday morning, my last week in town. I had been slowly packing up, getting ready to leave that Saturday. I went into the bathroom, groggy, still wiping sleep from my eyes. And there it was. Same toothbrush, same position. This time, it was dry. It hadn't just been used. It had been placed there. intentionally, as if someone wanted me to see it again. I didn't touch it this time. I just stared at it. Everything inside me felt still, tight, nervous, like I was waiting for something to move behind me. I turned slowly, checking the hallway behind me. Nothing. Quiet as usual. But now I didn't feel alone in the house. I couldn't shake it. That day at work, I barely concentrated. Every little sound made me jump. I kept checking my phone, opening the Airbnb app, rereading the messages with the host. I never saw them in person again. They didn't follow up after changing the code. They probably thought I was just being paranoid. I didn't go back to the Airbnb that night. After work, I stopped by a small motel just off the highway, the kind with the office in the center and parking spots directly in front of your door. I checked in with cash. The room smelled like old smoke and the AC rattled, but I didn't care. It felt safer than that guest house. No keypad, just a deadbolt and a chain, the way it should be. I didn't go back for anything except to return the key. The last morning, I stopped by the Airbnb just after sunrise. I hadn't slept much. My bag was already in the car. I parked, walked straight to the guest house, opened the door, and didn't even step inside. Just reached in, left the key on the table, and shut the door again. Before I left, I glanced through the window. The bathroom light was on. I hadn't left it on. I was sure of that, and through the small angle of the glass, I could just barely make out the edge of the sink. 2 toothbrushes in the cup. I didn't wait. I didn't call the host again. I got in my car and drove straight to the airport, even though my flight wasn't until the next day. I sat at a coffee shop in the terminal until late, then crashed at another motel nearby. I never got a refund, never wrote a review, never said anything to anyone about it. But I'll never stay in a standalone guest house again. I don't care how cheap or quiet it is. If it's not connected to a main building, if someone can come and go without being seen, I'm out. And I still think about that toothbrush. Not just that someone was coming in, but that they were careful, patient. They never took anything, never made a sound. They just wanted me to know they were there. I booked the attic studio on a Monday. I was traveling for work, and I needed something cheap and private for the week. The listing said it was a recently renovated space in an older home, top floor, with a private entrance from the back stairwell. The pictures made it look cozy. Sloped ceilings, wooden floors, a small kitchenette, and a skylight over the bed. It looked clean, quiet, nothing fancy, but enough for me. When I got there, it matched the photos. The host had left the key in a lockbox by the back door. No contact, just a message saying to make myself at home. I climbed the narrow stairs with my duffel bag and groceries and let myself in. The place was warm, smelled faintly like wood polish and old insulation. The ceiling sloped down on both sides, and there was barely room to stand straight in the middle. But it was clean. The bed was already made, white sheets tucked tight, and a small round table near the kitchenette had 2 chairs. There was a mini fridge, a hot plate, some mismatched mugs in a cabinet. I unpacked, made a sandwich, and settled in. That first night was fine. I watched something on my laptop, ate chips in bed, and fell asleep early. No noise from the house below, no traffic outside. I remember thinking it was almost too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you notice every creak of wood, every shift in the building. But nothing felt wrong. Not yet. The next morning, I went out for most of the day. When I came back and climbed the stairs again, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was a square panel in the ceiling, almost directly over the center of the room. No handle, no latch, just a wooden rectangle, maybe 2 feet wide. It blended in with the ceiling, but not perfectly. The edges were a little uneven. I couldn't believe I had missed it before. I stood on the bed and looked up at it. The ceiling was low enough that I could touch the panel with my palm. I pressed on one side gently, and it gave a little, not locked or sealed, just heavy. I stepped off the bed and moved one of the chairs underneath it, stood up, and gave it a firmer push. It opened slowly, stiff like it hadn't been moved in a long time. The panel lifted upward and slid just a bit to the side before stopping. Beyond it, there was nothing. Just blackness. No draft, no smell, just still air and pitch dark. I couldn't see anything inside. I stood there for a minute, trying to make out shapes or hear something, but it was completely silent. Then I gently lowered the panel back into place. It landed with a soft wooden thud. I didn't think much of it at first. Probably just leftover from before the renovation. Maybe there used to be a crawl space or storage area up there. Later that evening, I sent a quick message to the host, just out of curiosity. Hey, just noticed a hatch in the ceiling. Is there an attic space above? A few minutes later, he replied, "Oh, that's sealed. There's no attic above you, just insulation and beams. Nothing up there." I didn't say anything back. I definitely didn't tell him I had already opened it. That night, I stayed up later. I was scrolling on my phone in bed, lights off, just the glow from the screen. At some point past midnight, I put the phone down and closed my eyes. That's when I heard it, a sound from above, directly over me. It was so faint I wasn't even sure at first. Just a soft, slow shuffling. Not walking, more like something being dragged. A foot? A hand? I didn't move. I just listened. It stopped after a few seconds. Total silence again. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake now. I waited. Then again. Another drag. Just a few inches. Then a pause. Then another one. It wasn't constant. It wasn't rhythmic. It was slow, uneven, like whoever, or whatever, was up there was trying to move quietly, maybe even lying down and inching forward. It sounded heavy, and it was directly above me. I didn't move for hours. I didn't even turn on the light. I just lay there, breathing as quietly as I could, staring at the ceiling where the hatch was. The noises didn't go on for long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes total. Then nothing. By morning, there was no sound, no movement. I got up and stood on the chair again. I didn't open the hatch. I just looked at it. Nothing had changed. No marks, no gaps. But I could feel it. Something had been above me. That day, I went out again. Spent hours just walking around, sitting in a coffee shop, trying not to think about it. I told myself maybe it was an animal. A raccoon? A squirrel? Something that found its way into the crawl space. But the way it moved didn't feel like an animal. It was too heavy, too slow. I tried to convince myself otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept all the lights on, kept the chair under the hatch, just in case I decided to open it again. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it again. This time, it started with a single creak, like a shift in weight on a wooden beam. Then silence. Then that same dragging noise, a few inches at a time. Then another creak. It wasn't above the bed anymore. It had shifted toward the other end of the room, above the table. I stood frozen, heart hammering, listening. It stopped after a few minutes. I waited until sunrise, then walked to a hardware store down the block and bought a roll of duct tape. When I got back, I stood on the chair and pressed gently on the hatch again. It was still loose, still opened with barely any effort. I didn't push it open this time. I just held it, then let it drop shut again. Then I taped it, all 4 edges, thick layers, as tightly as I could. I didn't care how it looked. I just wanted it sealed. I left a day early, packed everything before noon, and sent the host a message saying something had come up. He didn't ask questions, just thanked me for staying. As I closed the door and walked down those back stairs for the last time, I felt something behind me. Not a presence, not a ghost, just a weight, a tension, like something was waiting for me to leave, watching through the ceiling. I haven't told anyone about it. I didn't report it, didn't leave a review. I didn't want to think about it anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what was really above me, what space the host insisted didn't exist. And if something was living up there, for how long? How many other guests had heard it and ignored it? The thought that haunts me most isn't that something was up there. It's that it knew I heard it, and it stopped moving when I listened, like it was listening too. I booked the Airbnb for a quiet weekend. I just needed a break. Work had been overwhelming, and I wanted to be somewhere I didn't know anyone. It was a 1-bedroom in a duplex, simple and clean, with a small patio and just enough furniture to feel comfortable. The listing said the host lived upstairs, but they were respectful and quiet. The price was decent, the location safe, and the photos looked good, nothing fancy, but not sketchy either. I checked in on a Friday evening. The lockbox code worked fine, and the place looked just like the photos. Neutral colors, wood floors, a decent little kitchen, and a queen-sized bed that didn't creak when I sat on it. There was a big window in the living room that let in plenty of natural light, and I remember thinking it was nicer than I expected. Everything smelled like pine cleaner and dryer sheets, clean towels, fresh sheets, and a welcome card on the table with Wi-Fi info. Pretty standard. I didn't see or hear the host that first night. I unpacked, made a frozen dinner, and spent the night watching TV. I brought my own laptop and an HDMI cable, so I just streamed movies. Nothing weird happened. The place was quiet, which I liked. It was tucked into a residential neighborhood, and the backyard faced a line of trees and a tall wooden fence. Felt private, safe. I even slept better than I had in weeks. It was the next morning when things started to feel a little off. I was looking for an outlet near the TV stand to charge my phone. I had unplugged the lamp to use the wall socket, and as I moved the cords around, I noticed a small black object tucked behind the leg of the stand, kind of wedged into the corner. At first, I thought it was a wall adapter or maybe one of those portable battery packs. But when I picked it up, I saw a tiny lens on one end. It was a camera, a small one, no wires, no blinking lights, just sitting there, unplugged. My first reaction wasn't panic. I assumed maybe a previous guest had left it behind, or maybe it was broken and the host hadn't noticed it. It wasn't pointed at anything specific, just angled upward toward the side of the couch. I set it on the table and didn't think too much more about it. I didn't love it, but it didn't seem like proof of anything sinister. I spent the day running errands and walking around the area. I found a bookstore, got lunch, and came back around 6 p.m. The place was still just as I left it. No signs that anyone had been inside. I made dinner, watched a few more episodes of a show, and got ready for bed around 10. The bedroom had a warm yellow lamp and blackout curtains. The bed was pushed against one wall, and across from it was a low dresser and an empty bookshelf. Nothing unusual, but as I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, I noticed something. A tiny red light, faint, but definitely there, high up on the top shelf, near the corner of the room. It wasn't bright, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I got up and walked over, and there it was, a camera. Not like the one I found earlier. This one was plugged in, with a wire running behind the shelf. It was angled down toward the bed. It was on. I stood there staring at it for a long time. My skin went cold. My stomach felt heavy, like it dropped. I didn't touch it. I didn't even want to get too close. I just backed away slowly, turned off the bedroom light, and walked into the living room. I sat down and tried to think rationally. Maybe the host used it for security. Maybe they were supposed to turn it off when guests arrived and forgot. But it was in the bedroom, facing the bed. It didn't make sense. I pulled out my phone and messaged the host through the app. I didn't write anything long, just a simple message saying I noticed a camera and asking about it. Then I waited. Nothing. I refreshed the app. Still no reply. I looked at the time. Almost 11 p.m. That's when I made the decision to leave. I didn't even bother packing everything neatly. I shoved my stuff into my bag, clothes, charger, toiletries, and zipped it up. I double-checked the shelf one more time. The red light was still there, still blinking slowly. I took photos of the shelf, of the camera, of the earlier one I found under the TV. I didn't touch anything else, just grabbed my things, turned off the lights, and walked out. As I locked the door behind me, I kept looking over my shoulder. The duplex was quiet, no lights upstairs, no sign of anyone watching. But I didn't feel alone. Not really. I got in my car and drove to the nearest motel I could find. I didn't even look at the reviews. I just needed somewhere with a door I could lock behind me and curtains that weren't hiding anything. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I submitted a report through the AIRBNB app. I uploaded the pictures and explained everything. The 2 cameras, one unplugged, one active. No reply from the host. I asked them to investigate. They responded a few days later. One of those generic messages thanking me for reporting and saying they take privacy violations seriously, that they would look into the matter. Weeks passed. Nothing. I kept checking the listing. It was still up. Same photos, same description, same host, same guest house. I flagged it again, wrote another message. This time I was more direct. I told them that if nothing was done, I'd go public. I'd post the pictures. I'd share the story. Another vague reply. Still no clear action. And that's when it hit me. Maybe I wasn't the first. Maybe other people had noticed something too and left quietly, unsure of what to do. Maybe some didn't notice at all. Or maybe some did, but never reported it. The listing stayed active for over a month. Then one day, I checked again, and it was gone. No explanation, no message, just gone. But by then, it didn't matter. I had already deleted the app. I don't trust those places anymore. I stick to hotels now. Places with real front desks and security cameras in the hallways, not pointed at your bed. And I still wonder, sometimes, how long had that red light been blinking before I noticed it? What had it recorded? And where did that footage go? Because the truth is, I'll never know. I caught it just in time to get out, but not in time to be sure of what had already happened. I was traveling solo for work and trying to keep my costs low. The company covered some expenses, but not enough to afford a hotel for the entire week. So I looked on Airbnb, found a basement apartment listed in a quiet residential neighborhood just outside the city. It was cheap, clean in the pictures, and had a private entrance. The reviews were a little mixed. A couple mentioned noise from upstairs, but nothing serious. The host messaged me quickly, very polite, told me where to park and how to find the entrance. She said she lived upstairs with her teenage son, and they'd give me space. I checked in late on a Tuesday night, around 8:30 p.m. It was already dark, but the house looked normal. 2 stories, older, maybe 1950s, but taken care of. Lights were on inside. I parked where she said, walked down the side path along the house, and saw the basement entrance around the back. A motion sensor light flicked on. The door had a keypad. I entered the code she gave me and went in. The basement was small but clean. Low ceiling. There was a couch, a coffee table, a small TV, a kitchenette, and a single bedroom with a double bed. The bathroom was narrow but had a decent shower and good water pressure. It smelled faintly of damp concrete, but nothing out of the ordinary for a basement. I unpacked, heated some leftovers I brought, and sat on the couch with my food. It was quiet. I could hear the occasional thud from above, footsteps maybe, but nothing too loud. The host had mentioned that in the listing. The first night passed with no problems. I watched a movie, did some work on my laptop, and went to bed around midnight. Slept straight through until morning. I got up, showered, left for meetings, and didn't come back until close to 7 p.m. again. Same routine, microwave dinner, scroll on my phone, check emails. Around 11, I got into bed. I was almost asleep when I thought I heard something, just a faint sound. Maybe a knock. I was already half out, so I brushed it off and closed my eyes again. But at around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. It was that strange kind of alertness where your body knows something isn't right before your brain catches up. Then I heard it. A single knock on the basement door. Not loud, not forceful, just one short knock. I froze in bed, held my breath, listening. Nothing followed. No movement, no voices, just silence. I got up slowly, walked into the living area, and stared at the door. I didn't approach it. I just stood across the room in the dark, trying to listen. The basement had no curtains, just those small ground-level windows near the ceiling. I crept over to one of them, stood on the couch, and peered out. The motion light outside the door was off. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just waiting, but nothing else happened. Eventually, I went back to bed, but I didn't really sleep. Every little creak or thump made me sit up. 10 minutes later, maybe a little more, I heard it again. Another knock. This time it was lighter, almost hesitant, like someone was being careful not to scare me. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. The knock didn't come again. I stayed completely still, heart pounding, for what felt like half an hour. I kept watching the door from my bed. There was no window directly on the door, so I couldn't see who or what was outside. I considered calling the host, but I didn't know what to say. There's someone outside? Maybe it was her or her son. But why knock like that in the middle of the night? I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just lay there, wide awake, until the gray light of morning started coming through the windows. At first light, I got up and went to the door. Didn't open it, just checked the lock. Still latched. Then I went to the window again, stood on the couch, and looked outside. That's when I saw them. Footprints. In the frost on the step. Not shoes. Not boots. Bare feet. Adult-sized. The kind of footprints where you can see the toes and the arch and the heel. Like someone had stood there barefoot for a while. There were at least 3, maybe 4 distinct prints. As if they'd shifted their weight. Maybe turned slightly. I stared at them for a long time, trying to make sense of it. It was below freezing that night. Who the hell would be outside, barefoot, in that kind of cold? And just standing there, not knocking frantically, not trying the door, just standing. I didn't open the door. I took a photo of the prints from the inside through the window, just in case. I packed my stuff immediately, didn't even shower. I was out of there by 7 a.m. I didn't say anything to the host, didn't leave a note, just messaged her from the car, said something came up and I had to check out early. I drove straight to a hotel downtown. More expensive, but worth it. As soon as I got into my room, I locked the door, double-checked it, and finally let myself breathe. I spent the rest of the day thinking about what happened. There were so many things I didn't understand. If it was a prank, it didn't make sense. Who walks around barefoot at night in below freezing temps to freak someone out quietly? If it was the host or her son, why not say something in the morning? And why bare feet? I checked the listing again, scanned the reviews. A few said the place was quiet and cozy, but one review from months ago stood out to me now. It mentioned someone lingering near the window late at night. The guest had thought it was a mistake, maybe someone confused about the entrance. But reading it again, it felt different, like maybe I wasn't the only one. I didn't report it. I didn't have any proof that something illegal happened. No one broke in. No one hurt me. But the feeling it left behind stayed with me. That sense of being watched, of someone standing there, silently, on the other side of the door. I never booked another basement Airbnb after that, and I never stayed in a place with a private entrance again. Too easy to get to you. Too easy to wait outside in the dark, knock once, then vanish. I still have that photo on my phone, the one with the footprints in the frost. I look at it sometimes and try to convince myself it was nothing, just a one-off, some weird local, a dumb kid, something explainable, but I never came up with an answer. I had been traveling for about 3 weeks already, hopping from one city to the next for work. I was getting tired of the constant packing, checking in, and adapting to new places. My last stop was a small city in the Midwest. Nothing fancy, just a few days of meetings, and then I'd finally get to go home. I booked an Airbnb on the edge of town, cheaper than the downtown hotels and close enough to where I needed to be. It was a 2-bedroom unit inside a duplex, quiet neighborhood, long street full of trees, same kind of houses lined up side by side. The host's description said it had a private entrance, full kitchen, Wi-Fi, and a washer-dryer, which was a bonus for me since I was running out of clean clothes. When I arrived, it looked exactly like the photos. Neat little driveway, small porch with a light that came on automatically. The key was in a lockbox by the door, and everything seemed straightforward. Inside, it smelled faintly of lemon cleaning spray and old carpet. Nothing creepy, nothing weird. The place had that lived-in feel though. Some scratches on the floor, a couple stains on the hallway runner, kitchen drawers a bit loose, but nothing unusual for a rental. I walked through it slowly, checking the bedrooms, bathroom, closets. Everything looked normal. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I'd wake up, head to work, come back around 6 or 7, heat up some food or order in, then watch TV or scroll my phone until I passed out. The unit was quiet. Walls were thick enough that I couldn't hear the neighbors, if there were any, and the street outside was dead silent at night, almost too quiet. But I was so tired most of the time I barely noticed. On the 3rd evening, something small caught my eye. I had just come out of the shower and went into the kitchen to grab water. The window above the sink looked out onto the side of the house, where a wooden fence ran between this property and the next. Right at the edge of the frame, I noticed the top of someone's head, just barely. They were standing close to the fence, like right up against it. I froze. At first I thought maybe it was a neighbor, but the head didn't move. It was motionless, and only the top of it was visible. I blinked a few times, leaned forward to get a better look. By the time I did, it was gone. Nothing there. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was someone walking by, maybe just shadows or my tired brain seeing things. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, I made sure the doors were locked twice and pulled the blinds tight. The next morning, I found the back door slightly open. Not much, just a couple inches. I hadn't used the back door once since I'd arrived. It opened out to a tiny concrete patio with 2 metal chairs and a rusty grill. No reason to go out there. I stood there for a moment, just staring at it. Maybe I hadn't shut it all the way. Maybe a gust of wind pushed it open, but it hadn't been windy. That day at work, I felt off, like I hadn't really slept, even though I'd gone to bed early. I kept replaying the open door in my mind, trying to come up with a normal reason. I told myself it didn't matter, that I just needed a couple more days and I'd be gone. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a soft thump. Not loud, just enough to break through the quiet. I lay there, frozen. The bedroom door was shut, and I could hear nothing now. No footsteps, no voices, no cars outside, just stillness. I waited maybe 5 minutes, listening. Eventually, I forced myself to get up. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and quietly opened the door. The hallway was empty. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, even the coat closet near the entrance. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. In the kitchen trash, near the top of the bag, was a half-eaten granola bar. I hadn't eaten any. I hadn't even bought any. I reached in and picked up the wrapper carefully. It was torn open, bitten clean through, and soft on the edge like it had just been thrown away. I checked the fridge, nothing missing. The cabinets were still shut. I didn't know what to think. Was someone coming in while I slept? The windows all had locks. The front and back doors had deadbolts. I started going over the place carefully, searching for any way someone could sneak in. That's when I noticed the attic panel in the hallway ceiling. It was a square wooden panel with no handle, just a small indentation where you could fit your fingers and pull down. I hadn't noticed it before. I pulled over a chair, reached up, and pushed. It moved easily, swinging open on a hinge. I shined my phone light up into the attic. It was dark, cramped, full of insulation and some old boxes pushed to the side. Cobwebs hung down, dust everywhere. At first I saw nothing. Then I spotted something in the far corner. A blanket, rolled up. Next to it, an empty water bottle and an energy drink can. I stayed still for a moment, heart racing. Someone had been up there, sleeping, eating, living. I climbed down slowly, trying to stay calm. I shut the attic and locked the bedroom door behind me. I stayed awake until the sun came up. I didn't know what to do. If I called the police, what would I say? That someone might be in the attic? That there was an old granola bar in the trash? I didn't even know if they were still up there. I left early that morning and drove to a diner across town. While I ate, I looked up local listings for hotels. I booked one immediately. It was more expensive, but I didn't care. I went back to the Airbnb around noon, packed everything fast, and left the key in the lockbox. I never said anything to the host. Later that night, at the hotel, I kept wondering how long they had been up there. Was it just the last few nights? Or since before I arrived? Had they watched me while I slept? I remembered that slight creak I'd heard. The trash, the door. It all made sense now. I checked the news for the area for the next few weeks, just in case. Nothing came up. No arrests. No stories. I left a vague review on the Airbnb page, said it was clean, quiet, but I wouldn't stay again. I didn't want to cause trouble. Maybe that was cowardly. Maybe I should have reported it, but I didn't. I still think about that attic sometimes, about whoever was up there, watching, hiding, eating quietly while I slept. I've stayed in dozens of rentals since then, but I always check the ceilings now. Every time,